Alex had one simple rule when he moved into apartment 307. He wanted peace. After getting a new job in the city, he rented what seemed like the perfect little apartment and imagined quiet evenings, clean rooms, and a simple life where nobody would bother him. But the moment he opened the door to apartment 307, he realized that his plans were already ruined. A young man was sleeping on the sofa with a pizza box beside him. Another was sitting on the floor surrounded by half-open moving boxes, and neither of them seemed surprised to see Alex standing there with a suitcase in his hand. Alex stared at them for several seconds before finally asking, "Who are you?" The man on the sofa slowly opened his eyes, looked at Alex, and smiled as if they were old friends. "I'm Ryan. Nice to meet you." Alex pointed at the apartment. "Why are you in my apartment?" Ryan sat up and looked confused. "Your apartment?" The quiet guy sitting on the floor finally looked up. "I think it's mine too." Alex immediately pulled out his phone and checked his rental agreement. His name was clearly written on it. Ryan grabbed his own phone and showed them his contract. Ethan, the quiet one, did the same. All three contracts had the exact same apartment number 307. For the next hour, the three strangers stood in the middle of the living room, arguing with the landlord over the phone. Unfortunately, the landlord didn't answer a single call. Ryan tried calling from different numbers. Ethan sent several messages, and Alex even searched online for the property management company. But nobody could solve the problem that night. Eventually, they realized they had no choice. They would have to stay in the apartment until the landlord figured everything out. Alex hated the idea immediately. Ryan thought the whole situation was hilarious, while Ethan simply picked up another box and continued unpacking as if three strangers sharing one apartment was completely normal. Their first night together was a disaster. Ryan used Alex's expensive coffee without asking. Ethan accidentally broke one of the kitchen cabinet doors, and Alex nearly lost his mind when he discovered Ryan had left his shoes on the dining table. "Why are your shoes on the table?" Alex asked angrily. Ryan looked down at them and shrugged. "Because the floor was dirty." Alex stared at him. "The floor is dirty because you keep putting your shoes everywhere." Ethan tried to hide his laughter. Alex looked at him. "And you think this is funny?" Ethan smiled slightly. "A little." The next morning, Alex woke up early for work and found Ryan sleeping on the kitchen floor. "Why are you sleeping there?" he asked. Ryan opened one eye. "The sofa has springs sticking out." Alex sighed. "Then fix it." Ryan smiled. "You're starting to sound like my mother." Alex shook his head and walked away. He couldn't understand how two complete strangers had already managed to make his peaceful new life completely chaotic. But over the next few weeks, something unexpected happened. The three boys slowly began adjusting to each other. Alex was extremely organized, so he created a cleaning schedule. Ryan ignored it almost every day. Ethan quietly followed it, without complaining. Ryan was terrible at cooking, so Alex started making dinner. Ethan would wash the dishes afterward. Eventually, without even planning it, they developed a routine. They ate together, watched movies together, and sometimes stayed awake until 2 in the morning talking about completely meaningless things. One evening, Ryan came home looking unusually quiet. Alex noticed immediately. "What happened?" he asked. Ryan shrugged. "Nothing." Ethan looked at him and said, "You're lying." Ryan smiled weakly. Maybe Alex didn't push him. Instead, he placed a plate of food in front of him. "Eat first. Talk later." Ryan looked at the plate and then at Alex. "You guys are weird." Ethan smiled. "You're the one who came home sad." Ryan laughed for the first time that evening. As the months passed, apartment 307 became more than just a place they lived. It became the one place where none of them had to pretend. Alex could admit when work was overwhelming. Ethan could talk about his struggles with his family. Ryan could joke around. But when he was having a bad day, the other two knew when to sit beside him without asking questions. They were completely different people, but somehow their differences made the friendship work. One Friday night, the three of them sat on the balcony with cheap takeout and watched the city lights. Ryan looked at Alex and asked, "What's your biggest dream?" Alex laughed. "To become successful enough that I never have to share an apartment with people like you again." Ryan threw a piece of bread at him, and Ethan laughed. Then Ryan looked at Ethan. "What about you?" Ethan became quiet for a moment before saying, "I want to prove to my family that I can make something of myself." Ryan nodded and then looked toward the city. When it was his turn, he didn't joke. "I don't really have anyone to prove anything to anymore." The laughter disappeared for a moment. Alex and Ethan looked at him, but neither asked questions. Ryan simply smiled and changed the subject. They let him. Later that night, after Ryan and Ethan had gone to sleep, Alex stood alone in the kitchen and noticed something strange. There was an envelope underneath the apartment door. He picked it up and saw his name written on it. Confused, he opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper. Apartment 307 was never supposed to be rented to you by accident. Alex's heart started beating faster. Before he could read anything else, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around. Ethan was standing in the hallway, and the expression on his face told Alex that he already knew something was wrong. Alex stared at Ethan, still holding the envelope in his hand. "You knew about this?" he asked. Ethan didn't answer immediately. He looked at the paper, then at Alex, and finally whispered, "I was hoping you'd never find that." Ryan suddenly appeared from the hallway, rubbing his eyes. "Why are you two standing in the kitchen like you're planning a murder?" Alex turned toward him and held up the paper. "Read this." Ryan took it, and his sleepy expression disappeared as he read the message. Apartment 307 was never supposed to be rented to you by accident. He looked at Ethan. "What does that mean?" Ethan sat down at the kitchen table and took a deep breath. He admitted that a few weeks before moving into apartment 307, he had received a strange phone call from an unknown number. The person on the other end had asked him questions about his family, his job, and where he planned to live. Ethan had thought it was some kind of scam and ignored it. A few days later, he found apartment 307 online at an unusually low price. The landlord accepted his application almost immediately. At the time, Ethan hadn't thought much about it. Now, after seeing the envelope, he realized someone had deliberately brought him there. Alex frowned. "Why would anyone care where you live?" Ethan shook his head. "I don't know." Ryan crossed his arms. "This is getting creepy." Alex looked at him. "Did you notice anything strange before moving here?" Ryan became quiet. After a few seconds, he admitted that he had also received a phone call before renting the apartment. The caller had asked him whether he was still in contact with someone from his past. Ryan had ended the call because he thought it was a prank. Alex stared at both of them. "Wait, you both got strange calls before moving here?" Ethan nodded. Ryan slowly looked at Alex. "Did you?" Alex didn't answer. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. There was an old message from an unknown number that he had completely forgotten about. It contained only one sentence: "You should choose apartment 307. The three friends looked at each other in silence. Suddenly, Everything they had considered an accident began to feel planned. Their contracts, the strangely cheap rent, the unknown calls, and now the mysterious envelope. Someone had wanted the three of them together. But why? The next morning, Alex decided they needed answers. He went to the property management office, but the receptionist told him the landlord was unavailable. When Alex showed her the apartment number, her expression changed. 307? She asked nervously. Alex nodded. Yes, why? She quickly looked away. That apartment has been empty for years. Alex's stomach dropped. What? She checked the computer and repeated, according to our records, nobody was supposed to rent it. Alex showed her his contract. She stared at it for several seconds and then whispered, "This isn't our contract." Alex immediately called Ryan and Ethan. When the three boys returned to apartment 307, they searched every room. They checked cupboards, drawers, closets, and even the basement storage area. For hours, they found nothing. Then, Ethan noticed something unusual behind an old bookshelf. There was a small metal box hidden inside the wall. Ryan pulled it out and looked at Alex. "Should we open it?" Alex nodded. Ethan carefully unlocked it. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Alex picked up the first photograph and froze. It was a picture of him outside his workplace. Another showed Ryan leaving a cafe. Another showed Ethan walking into a university building. The photographs had dates written on the back, some of them taken months before the three boys had ever met. Ryan's face turned pale. Someone has been following us. Alex looked through the photographs again. There was something even stranger. The final photograph showed all three of them standing outside apartment 307 on the exact day they first met. None of them had known each other then. How is that possible? Ryan whispered. Ethan picked up another photograph. It showed a man standing across the street from the apartment. His face was partially hidden by a hood, but something about him seemed familiar. Ethan suddenly stopped breathing. I know him. Alex looked at him. Who is he? Ethan didn't answer. Ryan stepped closer. Ethan, who is that? Finally, Ethan whispered, my older brother. Alex and Ryan stared at him. Ethan's brother had disappeared from their family 3 years earlier. His family had always told everyone that he had left the country and never wanted to come back. Ethan had believed that story for years, but now he was looking at a photograph proving that his brother had been watching apartment 307. Before anyone could say another word, the lights suddenly went out. The apartment fell into darkness. Ryan whispered, guys. A loud noise came from the front door. Someone was trying to open it. Alex grabbed his phone and turned on the flashlight. Ethan stood frozen beside the table while Ryan slowly moved toward the hallway. The door handle began turning. Once, twice. Then the door suddenly opened. A man stood outside. He looked directly at Ethan, and then he said something that none of them expected. You were never supposed to find each other. The three boys stood completely still. The man stepped into the apartment and looked at the photographs scattered across the floor. Then he added quietly, but now that you have, all three of you are in danger. The man stood in the doorway, his face partly hidden by the darkness of the hallway. Alex immediately stepped in front of Ryan and Ethan. Who are you? He demanded. The man looked at the three boys before slowly closing the door behind him. My name is Daniel, he said, and if you want to understand what is happening, you need to listen to me. Ryan gave a nervous laugh. A stranger walks into our apartment at midnight and tells us we're in danger. That's usually the part where we call the police. Daniel nodded. You can call them, but before you do, look at the photographs again. Alex picked up the photograph of Ethan's brother. Daniel pointed at it. His name is Michael. 3 years ago, he discovered something he wasn't supposed to discover. Ethan stared at him. What? Daniel looked at him seriously. He discovered that someone had been secretly manipulating people's lives, changing addresses, creating fake contracts, and bringing certain people together for a reason. Ethan's face became pale. You're saying my brother disappeared because of this? Daniel nodded. He tried to expose them. They found him before he could. Ryan stepped forward. Then why were we brought here? Daniel looked at all three of them. Because each of you was connected to Michael in a different way. Alex frowned. I didn't even know him. You didn't know him personally, Daniel replied, but your father worked with him years ago. Alex froze. My father? Daniel nodded. Your father helped Michael investigate the people behind the operation. Then he suddenly left the company and refused to talk about it. Alex felt a chill run through him. He had always believed his father had simply changed careers. Daniel then looked at Ryan. And you? Ryan shook his head. I definitely don't know anything. Daniel smiled slightly. Your mother was Michael's lawyer. Ryan's expression changed immediately. His mother had passed away when he was 17, and she had never spoken about Michael to him. Finally, Daniel looked at Ethan. And you're his brother. Ethan slowly sat down, overwhelmed by everything he had just heard. For the first time, the three boys understood why they had been brought together. Their friendship hadn't been an accident. Someone had connected their families years ago, and apartment 307 had been chosen because it was the one place where all three of them could be brought together without realizing it. But Daniel had one more revelation. The person behind this doesn't want to hurt you, he said. Ryan looked confused. Then, what do they want? Daniel's expression became serious. They want to know what Michael told you before he disappeared. Ethan immediately shook his head. He never told me anything. Daniel looked at him carefully. Are you sure? Ethan remained silent. Alex noticed his expression. Ethan? After a long pause, Ethan finally admitted something he had never told anyone. A week before Michael disappeared, he had visited Ethan late at night. Michael had looked frightened and told him only one thing. If anything happens to me, never trust anyone who knows about apartment 307. Ryan looked around the room. That means, Daniel interrupted him. It means someone connected to this apartment has been watching you from the beginning. Suddenly, a loud crash came from downstairs. Everyone froze. Daniel immediately turned off the lights. They're here. Alex whispered. Who? Daniel looked toward the window. The people we've been trying to stay ahead of. Within seconds, footsteps echoed through the building. Ryan looked terrified, but Alex grabbed his shoulder. Stay close. Ethan picked up the metal box containing the photographs. Daniel motioned toward the back door. They quietly escaped through the service staircase and reached the basement. As they ran through the dark corridor, Ethan suddenly stopped. What is it? Alex whispered. Ethan pointed toward a locked metal door. There was a number painted across it. 307. Alex stared at it in disbelief. That's impossible. Daniel walked toward the door and slowly opened it. Inside was a hidden room. There were old computers, photographs, documents, and dozens of files covering the walls. In the center of the room was a large table with 3 folders placed neatly on it. One had Alex's name, one had Ryan's, and the third had Ethan's. Ryan opened his folder with trembling hands. Inside were details about his childhood, his family, his mother's work, and even things he had never told his best friends. Alex opened his folder. His face went completely pale. What? Ryan asked. Alex couldn't answer. He turned the document around. At the top was a photograph of his father standing beside Michael. But standing on the other side of them was another man. A man Alex recognized immediately. Their landlord, the same man who had supposedly disappeared after renting apartment 307 to them. Ryan stared at the photograph. That's impossible. Daniel's face changed. He wasn't your landlord. Ethan looked at him. Then who was he? Daniel slowly answered. He was the person who created apartment 307. Before anyone could react, the computer in the room suddenly turned on by itself. A video appeared on the screen. Michael was sitting in front of the camera. Ethan moved closer, his eyes filling with tears. Michael, the recording began. If you're watching this, Michael said, then the three of you have finally found apartment 307. I need you to understand something. Bringing you together was never meant to hurt you. It was meant to protect you. Alex looked at Ryan. Ryan looked at Ethan. Michael continued speaking. Alex, your father knew the truth. Ryan, your mother protected the evidence. Ethan, I'm sorry I left you without an explanation. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. Michael took a breath before continuing. The people responsible for everything are still looking for the evidence, but they don't know one thing. He leaned closer to the camera. The evidence isn't inside apartment 307. The screen suddenly went black. A moment later, another message appeared. It's inside one of you. The three boys stared at each other. For the first time since they had met, none of them knew whether they could trust the person standing beside them. And somewhere above them, the front door of apartment 307 slowly opened. Someone had found them, and this time they weren't coming to talk. The sound of footsteps above them grew louder. Alex immediately shut down the computer while Daniel motioned for everyone to stay quiet. Ryan whispered, If the evidence is inside one of us, what does that even mean? Nobody answered. Ethan was still staring at the black computer screen, trying to understand what his brother had meant. Then suddenly, the basement door slammed open. A group of men rushed inside. Daniel pushed the three boys toward a second exit hidden behind the shelves. Run, he shouted. They didn't need to be told twice. They raced through a narrow underground passage that eventually led to an abandoned parking garage behind the building. The rain had started falling heavily, and the city was almost empty. They stopped beside an old car, trying to catch their breath. Ryan looked at Ethan. We need to figure out what Michael meant before someone else does. Alex nodded. But how do we know the evidence is inside one of us? Daniel looked at them seriously. Because Michael wouldn't have said it unless he knew exactly where it was. Ethan suddenly remembered something. Wait, he reached into his jacket and pulled out an old key. Michael gave me this 3 years ago. Alex stared at it. Why didn't you tell us? Ethan looked embarrassed. Because I forgot I had it. The key had a tiny number engraved on it, 307. They returned to the apartment before sunrise and searched every corner. They checked the furniture, the walls, the floorboards, and even the ceiling. Nothing. Finally, Ethan noticed something strange about the old mirror hanging in the hallway. The back of it had a small metal lock. He inserted the key, and the mirror opened like a hidden door. Behind it was a small compartment containing a hard drive. Ryan stared at it. Please tell me that's the evidence. Daniel connected the hard drive to the laptop. Thousands of files appeared on the screen. Contracts, bank records, photographs, recordings, and names filled the folders. Alex opened one file and immediately recognized his father's name. Ryan opened another and found documents connected to his mother's legal work. Ethan found files about Michael's investigation. They had finally found the truth. For years, a powerful group had been secretly using businesses, properties, and fake identities to manipulate people's lives and cover up illegal activities. Michael had discovered the operation and gathered evidence against them. But before he could expose everything, someone betrayed him. Alex looked at the documents and suddenly went silent. "What?" Ryan asked. Alex pointed at a photograph. It showed Michael standing beside three people. One was Alex's father, one was Ryan's mother, and the third was Ethan's father. The three boys stared at each other. Their parents hadn't been strangers. They had all been working together. Ethan's voice trembled. "Then why did our families hide this from us?" Daniel answered quietly, "Because they wanted you three to have normal lives." Ryan shook his head, but Michael disappeared. Daniel looked at him because he was the only one who refused to stop. Suddenly, Alex noticed another file. It was labeled with the date of Michael's disappearance. He opened it, and a video began playing. Michael appeared on the screen again. "If you found this file, then I failed to keep you away from this world. But there's something you need to know. The person who betrayed us wasn't an outsider." The video paused for a second. Then Michael continued. "It was someone inside our own families." Ethan's face became pale. Alex looked at Ryan. Ryan looked at Ethan. Nobody spoke. Then the laptop suddenly displayed a new message. "You have 10 minutes. Ryan stared at the screen. 10 minutes for what? A second message appeared. "Bring the hard drive to the old train station, or Michael dies." Ethan stood up immediately. "He's alive." Daniel looked at him. "How do you know?" Ethan pointed at the message. "They said Michael dies. They didn't say Michael died." For the first time in 3 years, Ethan had hope that his brother might still be alive. The three friends decided to go together. At the old train station, the place was almost completely abandoned. Broken lights flickered above the empty platform, and rainwater covered the tracks. They walked toward the center of the station carrying the hard drive. Then a voice came from behind them. "You shouldn't have come." They turned around. A man stepped out of the shadows. Ethan froze. It was his father. "Dad?" The man looked at the three boys with tears in his eyes. "I tried to stop this," he whispered. Ethan couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You knew Michael was alive?" His father nodded. "I've known for 3 years." Ethan's voice broke. "Then why did you let me believe my brother abandoned us?" His father looked away. "Because if they knew you were looking for him, they would have killed you too." Suddenly, a gunshot echoed through the station. Everyone froze. Ethan's father fell to the ground. Alex grabbed Ethan and pulled him behind a pillar while Ryan ducked beside them. Daniel looked toward the far end of the platform. Someone was standing there, a familiar face, the landlord. He slowly walked toward them and smiled. "You finally found the evidence." Ryan looked at the hard drive in Alex's hand. Then the landlord pointed toward Ethan. "But you still haven't figured out where the most important evidence is." Ethan looked confused. The man smiled. "It's not the hard drive." He pointed directly at Ethan. "It's in his memory." Ethan's expression changed. Suddenly, fragments of his childhood began coming back to him in old conversation with Michael. A hidden room, a strange symbol on the wall, and one sentence his brother had told him years ago. "If they ever find apartment 307, remember the red door." Ethan looked toward the abandoned station. At the far end of the platform stood an old red door, and behind it was the truth Michael had risked everything to protect. Ethan stared at the red door at the end of the platform, unable to move. For years, he had tried to forget the night his brother disappeared, but now the memories were returning one after another. Michael had taken him to a hidden room when he was younger. There had been a red door, a strange symbol painted beside it, and a small metal box. Most importantly, Michael had looked directly into Ethan's eyes and told him, "If you ever see this door again, don't open it unless you're with people you trust." Ethan slowly turned toward Alex and Ryan. After everything they had been through together, he knew exactly who Michael had meant. "We're going," he whispered. Alex nodded immediately. Together, they ran toward the red door while Daniel stayed behind to protect Ethan's father. The landlord shouted after them, but they didn't stop. Ethan pulled the old key from his pocket and inserted it into the lock. The door opened with a loud creak, revealing a narrow underground passage. The three friends entered, and the door slammed shut behind them. They followed the corridor until they reached a small room illuminated by a single hanging light. On the wall were dozens of photographs. Their parents were there. Michael was there. Daniel was there. And in the center was a photograph of the three boys standing together outside apartment 307. Ryan stared at it in disbelief. This was taken before we even met. Alex stepped closer. Someone knew we would become friends. Ethan noticed a small recorder on the table. He pressed the button, and Michael's voice filled the room. "If you're hearing this, then you've discovered the final room. I need you to understand why I brought the three of you together. Your parents didn't simply know each other. They were part of a group that tried to expose the people controlling this city. When they failed, they separated their families and erased every connection between them." Ethan's eyes filled with tears as Michael continued. "I stayed behind because someone had to protect the evidence. I couldn't tell you the truth because they were watching you. But there was one thing I couldn't predict. You three would find each other on your own." Ryan smiled sadly. "So our friendship really wasn't planned?" Michael's voice answered from the recording, "No, that part was never planned. And that's exactly why it became the strongest thing they couldn't control." Suddenly, the lights went out. Ryan whispered, "Please tell me that's part of the recording." It wasn't. Footsteps echoed through the corridor. Alex immediately grabbed the recorder and the hard drive. "We need to move." They rushed toward another exit, but before they reached it, the door opened from the other side. A man stood there holding a flashlight. Ethan froze when he saw him. "Michael?" The man stepped into the light. It really was him. Ethan couldn't move. For 3 years, he had imagined hundreds of ways his brother might return, but he had never imagined seeing him standing alive in front of him. Michael looked older, tired, and wounded, but it was unmistakably him. Ethan ran toward him and hugged him tightly. Michael closed his eyes and held his younger brother as tears rolled down his face. "I thought you were dead," Ethan whispered. "I know," Michael replied. "I'm sorry." Ryan and Alex stood quietly nearby, giving the brothers a moment. Then, Michael looked at them and smiled. "So these are the two people you were talking about?" Ethan laughed through his tears. "Yeah, these idiots are my best friends." Ryan immediately protested. "Excuse me, I'm the lovable one." Alex shook his head. "You're definitely the idiot." For the first time in days they laughed, but Michael's expression quickly became serious again. "We don't have much time." He explained that the people behind the operation had been searching for him for years. He had stayed hidden because exposing them without enough evidence would put everyone in danger. The hard drive contained financial records, but the most important proof was stored somewhere else. Michael looked at Ethan and said, "You were carrying it the entire time." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" Michael pointed toward Ethan's old necklace. Ethan touched the small silver pendant he had worn since childhood. "This?" Michael nodded. "Dad gave that to you when you were 12. He told you it was just a family keepsake." "It isn't." Ethan removed the pendant and examined it carefully. Michael opened the back with a small tool, revealing a tiny memory chip hidden inside. Ryan stared at it. "You're kidding." Michael shook his head. "That's the evidence they've been searching for." Before they could celebrate, a loud explosion shook the building. Dust fell from the ceiling. Michael looked toward the exit. "They found us." Everyone rushed toward the underground tunnel. Alex helped Ethan's father, who was still injured, while Ryan carried the hard drive. Daniel appeared from the opposite corridor and shouted, "The exit is blocked." Michael looked around and noticed an old maintenance tunnel. "This way." They ran through the narrow passage as footsteps echoed behind them. When they finally reached the surface, police vehicles were already approaching. Daniel had secretly contacted authorities before entering the station and sent them copies of the evidence. The landlord tried to escape, but officers surrounded him. As he was arrested, he looked at the three boys and laughed bitterly. "You think this is over?" Michael stepped forward. "No. It's over for you." The investigation that followed exposed a massive network of corruption and illegal activity. The evidence from the hard drive and Ethan's pendant finally gave authorities everything they needed. Several powerful people were arrested, including those who had spent years hiding behind respectable businesses and influential positions. Weeks later, apartment 307 looked completely different. The strange mystery was gone, the danger was gone, and for the first time, the three boys could simply enjoy being friends. One evening, they sat together on the same balcony where they had once joked about their dreams. Ryan raised his coffee and smiled. "To apartment 307. Alex laughed. "The worst apartment I've ever lived in." Ethan smiled. "And the best place I've ever found." Ryan looked at both of them. "You know what I realized?" Alex sighed. "Here we go." Ryan smiled. "We were brought together by someone else's plan." Ethan nodded. "But we became brothers because of our own choice." The three friends raised their cups, and somewhere behind them, the apartment door slowly closed. Apartment 307 had started as a mistake. Then it became a mystery. Then it became the place where three complete strangers discovered something none of them had expected. A friendship that could survive anything. 6 months had passed since the night everything changed. The investigation was finally over. The people behind the conspiracy had been arrested, and apartment 307 had become quiet again. For the first time, Alex, Ryan, and Ethan could wake up without wondering who was watching them. But despite everything they had discovered, the three friends still lived together. They had started as complete strangers who couldn't even agree on who should clean the kitchen. Now, they couldn't imagine living without each other. One Saturday morning, Ryan walked into the kitchen holding 3 pieces of paper. "Guys, I have an announcement." Alex looked up from his coffee. "If this is another one of your stupid business ideas, I'm leaving." Ryan ignored him and placed the papers on the table. "We're moving." Ethan looked surprised. "Moving where?" Ryan smiled proudly. "We're buying apartment 307. Alex nearly dropped his coffee. "Absolutely not." Ryan laughed. "Why not? This place has everything. Mystery, danger, secret rooms, emotional trauma." Ethan started laughing. "You forgot the broken kitchen cabinet." Ryan pointed at him. "Exactly, memories." Alex looked around the apartment. For a moment, he remembered the first day he had walked through that door. He had been angry, confused, and desperate to get away from the two strangers standing in front of him. Now those same two strangers were his closest friends. He smiled. Fine, but we're repainting the walls. Ryan immediately agreed. Deal. Ethan nodded. And we're replacing the sofa. Ryan looked offended. That sofa has history. Alex laughed. That sofa is a health hazard. Later that evening, Michael came to visit Ethan. He stood at the apartment door holding a small box. Ethan opened it and smiled when he saw what was inside. It was the old photograph of the three boys outside apartment 307. Michael handed it to him. Keep it. Ethan looked at the picture. Why? Michael smiled. Because this is the only part of the whole story that wasn't planned. Ethan looked toward Alex and Ryan, who were arguing over what movie to watch. He smiled. That's my favorite part too. Before leaving, Michael pulled Ethan aside. You know, when I first brought you here, I thought I was protecting you. Ethan looked at him. You were. Michael shook his head. No, I was hiding you. There's a difference. Ethan smiled. Maybe, but you came back. Michael's eyes softened. Because I finally understood something. You don't protect the people you love by keeping them away from everything. Sometimes you protect them by standing beside them. Ethan hugged his brother. That night, the three friends sat together on the balcony. The city lights stretched endlessly in front of them. Ryan looked at Alex and Ethan and said, Do you ever think about how crazy all of this was? Alex laughed. Every day. Ethan smiled. If we had never moved into apartment 307, none of this would have happened. Ryan shook his head. Maybe that's not true. They both looked at him. Ryan continued, Maybe we were supposed to meet, not because someone planned it, but because we needed each other. Alex smiled. That's surprisingly wise for you. Ryan threw a cushion at him. Ethan laughed as the three of them started arguing again. For a moment, everything was normal. No secrets, no enemies, no danger. Just three friends sitting together, laughing about the strangest year of their lives. Years later, apartment 307 would still have the same number on the door. But it would no longer be remembered as the place where a mysterious plan brought three strangers together. It would be remembered as the place where three strangers became brothers. Alex eventually built the career he had always dreamed of. Ethan became successful in his own field and repaired his relationship with his family. Ryan, surprisingly, turned his chaotic personality into a successful business. They all changed, grew older, and built lives of their own, but every few months, they returned to apartment 307. Because no matter where life took them, that apartment would always be home. One evening, years after everything had ended, Ryan placed 3 old coffee cups on the balcony table. Alex looked at him and smiled. You still have those? Ryan nodded. Of course. Ethan joined them and looked at the city. To apartment 307, Alex raised his cup to friendship. Ryan raised his to the 3 idiots who somehow survived it. Ethan laughed and raised his cup too, and as the 3 friends sat together beneath the city lights, they finally understood the truth behind everything that had happened. Their meeting may have been planned. Their apartment may have been chosen for them. Their families may have been connected long before they knew each other. But their friendship was never planned. They chose it. They protected it. And they kept choosing each other year after year. Because sometimes the greatest family isn't the one you're born into. It's the family you find along the way